Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Oh, you're too early. Okay, so here they are, Joey Burns and John Convertino.
Hello.
Calexico.
It's good to see you, Larissa.
We tried it.
Yeah,
I
we
wanted to
did.
give you a real entrance to come up on stage, but now you're here.
Yeah.
It's the art of improvisation. That's as you have it here.
We tried a lot. No, I'm just joking.
We just
So-
wanted all the applause, yours and ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe get another one? Another one? Yeah, okay.
Good job.
So it's great to have you here. You had a very busy year working hard for the new album called The Edge of the Sun. So where does the title come from?
Well, I think it kind of infers from some of the artwork, which was designed by a good friend of ours from Tucson, Ryan Trait. He also did the album art for the last record, Algiers. And on the image of the album cover, you see what looks like a sun, but it's more cool colors like blues and dark colors. But there's also a very minimal landscape, and in that landscape there's an individual who is kneeling down, who's illuminated from the inside out. And so the edge of the sun could be a lot of different things. But for me, it kind of refers to the path that some of these characters are taking in these songs on this record. There's a lot of adversity and challenges, and there's struggle. But towards the end of the record, especially on the last song of the album, Follow the River, there's a sense of hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're reaching back to the edge of the sun.
So it was clear from the beginning that this should be the end song,
Yeah.
to give a bit of a hope to
It was
the
either the
listeners.
beginning or the end, and it depends on which, if you're on side A or side B.
Okay. So is it difficult to find a title for an album? Because it's the 9th album you did in 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So does it take a long time?
Yeah, this one definitely did. We were kind of hoping to get something from the songs. Actually, that's part of the process, and the title came right at the very end. A lot of times these songs tell you what they want, and in this case, I think the songs really helped us come up with the title.
Mm-hmm. So I was listening to the album, and the first impression I got, okay, it's a sort of like a classical Calexico album, but it's different. It has some cinematic parts in it. It also has like spare times, and it's even more pop songs, to call it like this. So how was the process? When you start working, is it like, okay, do you have an idea? You come together and say, we're doing a new album, we want it to be more pop or whatever? Or is it sort of like a process?
It's most definitely a process, yeah, you're exactly right. And when we go into the studio, we generally just sit down with John on the drums and myself on guitar and just try to make up some ideas, some musical sketches, maybe capture a mood, a feeling, and from those initial basic tracks, then we build, say, the bass or maybe some other arrangements, instrumentation, maybe some lyrics. And it's a gradual process. And then once we've kind of accumulated a whole bunch of material, like how much would you say over the course of this record?
Well, this one, there was a lot, which was great. Towards the end, there was 20 plus ideas to choose from. And that's really nice because then you have a broader palette and more diversity, And sometimes we go in the studio and it's, you're creating something out of nothing. So at times we rely on the studio to help us out. We have maybe drum machine, or there's this wall of keyboards, of synthesizers, and so you start creating in that way from the bottom up.
But isn't it because you're touring a lot, you're working a lot, isn't it sort of important to have like a starting date? Because when you probably do songs anyhow, or do music anyhow when you're traveling, when you're working, but is there this certain moment you say, we're working on a new album now, or is it just comes along?
I think you need the deadline.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need something at the end.
You need the deadline,
Okay.
Then say, okay, now we got to get going. 'Cause
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but no starting point.
Yeah, at some point you do have to say, oh, Joey will give me the call and we'll head down to the studio. And in this case, we started in Tucson and we were working a lot with Sergio Mendoza, our keyboard player, and he's been working with us for about 7 years now. So there's a really good relationship there, friendship there, and I think it was his idea through his friend, Ro, down in Mexico City, that maybe it'd be a good idea to get out of town and spend about 10 days in Mexico City. And I kind of felt like that was the true beginning of the record.
Okay.
Because, we're stepping out of town, our comfort zone, so to speak. And
Okay. So, because it seems to me that traveling is a very important part, not only for you because you travel a lot, but also for the music. Because when you listen to the records and you listen to many of them for a longer time, then it's always like, it's sort of like always going on, if you know what I mean. It's not like the hobo train, which is always like running, but there's a sort of like a movement in every record, not just because the songs move, but there's travel in there.
I think there's always been that too. I mean, from the beginning, when we first started making some recordings together in John's apartment in Tucson, John was collecting not only vintage drums at the Chicago Music Store downtown in Tucson, but he also bought a marimba, an old accordion, and fixed that up. I have a cello, and I had a mandolin, and these instruments are not very rock and roll from the standard pass. Maybe in some bands in some places, but not only that, the instrumentation, but some of the direction, kind of taking influence from the Mediterranean or Eastern Europe and recording ideas on the very first album, Spoke. They kind of had this old world sensibility. I think that's something that's been always there in the thread of Calexico albums in the past, is just kind of having this other window to not just the Southwest United States, but around the world.
The last album was called Algiers. You recorded it in New Orleans. And you mentioned Sergio, who came up with the idea to go to Mexico. So was it just because he had the idea, or is it like, where can we go now? We need some inspiration from different places. So what actually is the inspiration from a place like Mexico City, like New Orleans? Is it musically to be heard on the album, or is it more the atmosphere of such a big city, such a chaotic city?
Well, I think mostly it's to be in a place to create, knowing you have that block of time. Being in an amazing city like New Orleans or Mexico City, that's kind of like the sugar on top, that we get to explore these places, in the little bit of time that we're outside of the studio, and it's inspiring. It's amazing to see Frida Kahlo House, which is only 2 blocks away from where we're recording. And in the case of New Orleans, I mean, the city is steeped in musical history, so it kind of just oozes out, and you have that in your mind, but when you're actually in the moment recording the song, you may not be thinking about that at all. It could be just you're in that moment, and those are those moments when you try to capture on the tape. And
Okay, so you're sort of like the transformation from what is outside goes through you into the music?
it can,
Okay.
not always, but and I love the hobo train, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think
that's something
it
I think
fits.
about a lot. I love.
Okay,
I
yeah,
love
because
trains.
it's like this almost like always like this circus going on and on and on, and something is changing all the time. So that's
You got to
the
keep
idea.
moving. Yeah.
So by the way, because of changing, is there some sort of a red line in the album? Maybe by coincidence, when you sort of looked at it later on? Oh, there are some links, or is it just...
There's lots of threads, I think, on this record, and as in a lot of our music, because there is so much variety in styles of songs and influences or language, instruments. I think that, John, you were saying that this album kind of reminded you in some ways in the character of Feast of Wire, which was back in 2003, in that each song drastically changed stylistically. And that's kind of like, making your own, radio station or or even switching dials from song to song on the radio stations. And lyrically, I think there's a lot of continuity and cohesiveness that kind of brings it all together. And like I mentioned earlier in regards to the title, a lot of the characters and a lot of the songs kind of reference a sense of perseverance, or facing adversity or challenges, and finding a way through it, around it, waiting, being patient. These may be experiences internally, or they could be involving an external environment or a community. And it's really nice too for me just to kind of share some of these songs, and especially from the vocals, having some friends sitting in, giving some of these other characters of these songs another dimension. So there's a lot of guests on this new record. You haven't probably heard the new record yet, I'm guessing. No, not yet.
But there are many guests on the album. You're very famous for having a lot of guests on albums and on tour. But how did it happen that so many people were involved? Did you just call them, or did they call you? Hey, we want to be on the record?
We just pretty much called him. I mean, Sergio really helped us a lot with that. He was like, I mean, we have friends that have been on our past records, like Sam Beam, and so we were hearing his voice on Bullets and Rocks, and that was a pretty easy and obvious choice. And Amparo Sanchez, a friend of ours that we've been working with for many, many years, but Sergio was like, well, what about Nico Case? You guys worked with her, and she's never been on any of your records. What about? And we're like, well, I don't know if she has the time, and we were a little bit more cautious about that, and he was like, well, just go for it, just call her, and that's what we did. And she did have some time to stop by, and she added a beautiful vocal on Tapping on the Line, and it was just, let's give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah. There's also some other instances too where we're sitting in the studio and thinking, it'd be nice to involve someone from Mexico, and through again, Sergio and some connections through mutual friends, we were able to contact someone like Carla Morrison, who's singing on a song called Moon Never Rises. And we didn't get the chance to meet her, but we sent tracks, and then she did some recordings, and she sent them back, which is nothing new, but it also is kind of exciting in that here's this surprise that's coming back to you. And here's your song, or our song, and with this new vocal, somebody who we've never met before. But of course, we're a fan of her music, and we've seen her perform, and she's very, very popular, especially in the Northern Hemisphere and in Mexico. Or in the instance where there's friends of friends, and they say, hey, you should call up Ben from Band of Horses. Okay, and so he emailed me saying, hey, I heard you're trying to get a hold of me.
Okay.
Like, great, would you be interested in singing on a song? And he was really down to earth, and there was no other people involved. It was just he and I emailing back and forth, and it happened really quickly and really naturally, as if we were in the same town, hanging out, but we weren't. So that was interesting.
Is it always working easy when you involve someone? Did it sometimes happen that the sort of which comes out of it wasn't like really good, and then what to say when Nico Case is coming and then you don't like the song? Probably it never happens, but
right, for sure. And I think that we're all really down to earth and very very grounded to say, like, hey, if you're interested in still doing this, by all means do, because you're right. Nico Case came to the studio and she had not heard the song. We tried sending it to her, but for whatever reason it didn't work. But she's, of course, very talented and a good friend and very honest herself. And she really liked it. She loved the bridge section on the song Tapping on the Line, and she was actually kind of cracking up at some of the lyrics, which I was happy to see, because they are kind of funny. The lyrics are Indian summer, Cold War skies, nervous drummers on overbooked flights. And she herself was a drummer too, so I think that she kind of understood some of the humor in that. And so it was nice. Yeah, sure, there's moments when, like, there's sometimes, we ourselves do a lot of collaboration and backing people up on their records, and we're very open to criticism and direction because it's their project. And so I think we feel very much the same way in wanting them, any guest, to feel comfortable in what they're contributing. And there was one or two moments on this record when I said, hey, would you mind doing it one more time and trying it in a different way, just so we have more opportunity to blend what you're doing to the track. And in both instances, the artist was not in Tucson at the studio, so it wasn't that difficult, but I did think, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask, but I thought, it doesn't hurt.
They can handle that.
It was all very, very pleasant and polite, of course.
So the actual songwriting and recording happens, of course, in the studio. But it seems to me that sort of like the developing process of the song itself is also done in the studio, because normally people go to rehearsal rooms, prepare their songs, and then they spend a limited time in studio because it's expensive.
Right.
So you have it's different with you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it seems like I was saying earlier, we kind of rely on the song to tell us what to do next. It creates a mood, and not speaking for Joey, I know that he works on the lyrics, at home or sometimes right there in the studio in the moment, and so there's those contrasts, and then in the case of when the Angels played, Joey already had the lyrics, and so he already had that in his head from Pieta Brown. She wrote the lyrics. And we were down in Mexico, and he just launched into this song, and I was like, okay, and it was done, one take.
Okay.
Lyrics, melody, chords, drum part, and so you have that happening. And then there's other times when it really takes some time, and I feel like this record really, lyrically, really is one of our strongest, and I feel like there was a lot of thought put into the lyrics, and Joey was working with his brother. His name's John, too. Us Johns, we're good collaborators. And so, yeah, and I'll let Joey talk some more about that, too.
And
You want to ask me about that?
no, I leave it up
Very
to the
good,
audience.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole mix of
okay.
of experiences about songwriting. Some are already ready to go. A lot of times they're never ready to go.
Yeah.
And I like that excitement of kind of working on just capturing the mood of the music, and then that mood and relying on the studio as part instrument kind of refers where we're going to go from there.
And it probably also helps that you are working together since a
Yeah,
very
sure.
long time.
Yeah.
Let's call it like it.
Yeah, it helps.
So you exactly know how the other one is like ticking and working.
Sometimes.
Okay, so
Not
it's
always.
not
No.
always. Okay,
Yeah. Let the mystery be is what that's what they
so
say.
we don't go too deep into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of playing music, is that sometimes you don't need to talk about it. And I think I'd rather not hear somebody talk about what they think we're all doing in the studio. I don't want to hear that. I want to just play it. And once you hear it, you feel it, then you know. That's what I like. Should we do a little demonstration? We can all play instruments here on stage.
It's
But
true, though.
yeah.
It's better. It's so much better if you just don't talk about it. And I feel like that music is...
As you can hear.
Yeah. No, I mean, we can talk about it here because we're not in the studio and we're not writing a song right now. We're just talking about it. So that's fine. But, it would be really great if there was a drum set here. And I'd love to play some drums for you guys, but that's a lot easier for me. Joey's going to play later. It's
No
beautiful.
drum set.
It's awesome. But the point being that, we can go in there, and besides just saying, hi, how was your day, we can just start playing music. And I think that, too, is part of a long relationship, that we respect the space,
So this is the 9th album you did together. Now,
Sounds so massive, 9 records.
yeah, but it's massive. It's
Yeah.
quite a long time. It's a long career.
Yeah, how about that?
A nice chunk.
What happened? How'd that happen?
You didn't have that kind of career in mind when you started, probably.
No. Just happy to get to play music and continue to travel, and just as much as it's important to have a good relationship in the studio with the engineers and the instruments, and tapping into what John keeps on talking about is that space, and it's the vibe, it's a feel. And when we go on tour, that vibe is very much part of a community, and it's like playing in front of an audience, regardless of where we are, what culture, what language. It's tapping into the energy of the room, and those experiences really kind of help to change and help the songs evolve, and that is exciting too. And then maybe we'll record a live show and make it available so that people can kind of see that development and evolution and to see the growth, and it's a very living and breathing thing.
So now the baby is born. It's not out yet in Germany. It will come in April. So when you're working and you have a deadline and then it's done, what's the feeling? Is it like, oh, thank God it's out now, or it's ready? Or are you sort of like, because when you're stuck for such a long time working on something, then you sort of like fall into like a big hole afterwards, or is it not happening to you?
It was interesting for me on this one. I don't live in Tucson anymore. I live in El Paso, Texas, which is only 5 hours east, but
Only.
still, yeah, I know. But it was interesting because when we got done and we went through this long process of finding the sequence, I kind of allowed myself to really be disconnected to it, and it was kind of a relief just to not listen to it for several days, maybe a few weeks even. And when I got back to Tucson to start rehearsing for this show in Scotland, it was really exciting to hear the songs again and to hear them live, and to watch Jacob play a trumpet line and a vibe line at the same time, because there's a lot of parts on the songs, and it was great to see them come together, and then we got to play in Scotland at the Celtic Connections, and I was really nervous about it, but Joey wrote the set list out with 4 brand new songs right in the beginning, and so we were all up there with our hearts like dunk chunk chunk chunk, and are they going to like it, or is it just going to fall apart? But they really liked it, and we didn't fall completely apart.
We got it up off the ground.
Yeah.
I believe that.
It was exciting.
Yeah, for me, I disconnected from the songs in the summertime. I took a break, and I didn't listen, I didn't work. I told myself that I was going to work on the records, but I just couldn't. And then we went on tour, and we toured around Europe, and we had a day off in Athens, Greece, and I was excited to kind of pull out a couple of the songs and have some local Greek musicians from this band, an amazing group called Takim, sit in on a song or two. And they were really inspiring. And playing, there were about 3 of them that played. One played violin, one played an instrument called the kanun, which is kind of like a hammered dulcimer, and it's got a very dreamlike quality, similar to like the cimbalom in Romanian music. And then there was an instrumentalist who played bouzouki and oud and several other variations on those kind of instruments. And they were just remarkable, and it was exciting getting to watch them play just on their own and then playing on our song. And it went so well that I said, hey, do you want to play on another song? And so I brought in a song that John had initially written called Roll Tango. And there's a section where there's a solo, and I turned to the oud player, Thomas, and I said, do you just want to do a solo, or this is for you, what do you want to do? And he says, well, I could do a solo like this. It went, it's like, wow, that's cool. And he goes, or I could do a melody. And I would stack all of my instruments, the kanun, and several violin parts. I'm like, oh, I like that idea. I like the wall of sound from Greece. And it's phenomenal. And it will be included as a bonus disc in a special edition that hopefully you can find here in the record stores or online. And that was a really exciting experience for me because, again, just it's a reminder of being in the moment and just using your ear, not so much trying to plan and organize what's going to be, but just see what is happening now. And then in walks Eric Burden. He was also at the same music festival, and he was really impressed with what was going on. And I said, Eric, you want to sit in on the song? He goes, I got to go do a gig right now, but send it to me and I'll do it. And so sure enough, we connected later on, and it was a big honor to have him be a part of the song and to kind of have this connection from, many different places and styles all coming together. His wife is Greek, and so that's also another connection, I think, to this whole experience. And it was really fun getting to do that, because we've always talked about going to Europe or coming here and playing. We have a lot of our gear stored here in Berlin, and so Berlin is like a second home for us. It'd be fun to do our Berlin record or something like that. It was nice doing it in Greece for a couple songs, and it's fun doing that.
What I always liked about Calexico is that, of course, you have a special Calexico sound, however you're going to sort of like to try to fix it. But with every record, one could really feel that the urge always was to do something new. Even if it's small parts, it's not, probably you don't yourself want to be bored doing the same ever and ever again, but
Right.
it gives, for the audience, it's always something like to discover there's little parts where you say, oh, that's different. So it's like always like a plaything, even if it's of course honest business, but it's, I always like the idea, and especially on the new album, it's like you could feel like it's, there's a wideness going through, it's very relaxed in a way, but it's always like these little things, okay, they tried something. So is it like this, the impression right?
I think there's a lot of experimentation, definitely. And yeah, I think a lot of times too, I notice when we're listening to playbacks, the motivation is we really satisfying ourselves first, I think. I like the way this sounds. I like the way this flows. I like the mood this is creating. And so just kind of going from there, like I was saying earlier, it wasn't until way later, it was like, oh yeah, I hope people like this, I mean, ultimately, that's what you want, and hopefully people will like it. But in the studio, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm just really trying to catch the mood of the moment from the guitar, or if it's something Joey's singing, maybe I have to catch a melody. Because really melody is the tempo, it is the mood, and sometimes there isn't a melody there, so I have to find it in the guitar, and I really have to, so I'm not thinking about the end result at that moment, So it's really exciting at this point right now to hear people's reactions from the music and to talk to people about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
We're lucky that we get to work a lot at Wave Lab Studio in downtown Tucson. It's a fantastic place. Craig Schumacher owns the studio, and the engineer Chris Schultz is very integral into making things happen for us. And not only that, those guys are always finding, discovering, buying, trading new instruments, new gadgets. And one of the instruments that is new to this record is this little toy keyboard. It's called a Critari, or it's made by Critari, and it's like $250. And everyone that came in the studio fell in love with it, and wanted to buy one and take one home. I took one home to my kids. It's just got buttons and little knobs, and you can make noise. And so you'd be sitting there in between takes and listening back, and someone would pick up this annoying thing and start doodling with it and playing with it, and it's like, oh, and I was very guilty of this. And then you'd have this instrument on just about every song. And then we're like looking at each other like,
There's that thing
is it
again.
good? Should we keep it? Like, I don't know. It's a computer. We have limitless tracks. Oh no.
Yeah.
We got to sift through that later, But it was fun doing that. And Wave Lab is really an important part to our connection to the music and the recording experience, because sometimes you go to a studio and it's empty, and it feels like you're, in an empty place. And it's nice to look at instruments to be inspired when you're recording, and just sitting there hour after hour after hour, or have, sunlight coming through is really nice. And I'm constantly trying to push for new ideas. I need new ideas. I don't want to, if I feel like I've repeated ourselves, then I'm like, all right, scratch that. Let's just try something else. And even my wife, Nova, sometimes she's like, that song sounds a lot like Blackheart. Are you going to put that out? I'm like, I think it's kind of cool. John likes it. He goes, it sounds like Black Harp. Like, okay, well, I'll just push it over here. But, and I love that. I love the feedback from family, friends. And of course, Sergio is there too. And he's kind of encouraging us in some ways. And his involvement was really gradual and natural as well. Just kind of like how the ideas unfolded, that there would be a lot of guests on the record. And so we really owe a lot of gratitude to him for just being there, especially when John couldn't be there at the studio every day. And it helps to have someone there to bounce off ideas. And it was interesting to see what kind of ideas he would come up with, whether it be in Tucson or in Mexico City. And like, well, that sounds a lot like, Minister Cobre. Are you sure you want to do that? I mean, it's fun. We're in Mexico City, and his friends are looking at us like, what you doing, Ming? What are you doing? But it was just fun, and you just let go of the critic inside and just enjoy playing music. And then good stuff eventually kind of rises to the top, and you kind of you go with what's best at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, we had a lot of material, and out of that there's 20 songs, 12 on the record. There's 8 bonus tracks that are floating around somewhere in space. And it's really exciting. John, what were you saying? You wanted to put all of the songs out at one point.
Yeah, at one point I was like, let's just put them all out there, and then our fans can choose their own sequence, the songs they like. But, that's like an idea, I don't know how feasible it would be to do that, but it was just kind of fun to think about that, because we really liked them all and wanted them all to be out there. But we grew up with listening to vinyl, and you have a side A and a side B, and that's a really beautiful way to make a record. You have this little break where you have to turn the record over, and it kind of like is opening up a new chapter, in the book. Mm-hmm. And so it was really important for us to kind of stick to that, and I thought it turned out pretty great. And I think the bonus record will be a real treat, and so you have that happening too. And we were talking about it earlier in the studio, Sergio, he has this way of presenting an idea that doesn't sound like it's the end of the world if it doesn't get used. You're in this process, and you're trying so many things, you can't take it personal if your idea sucks, and you just have to let it go.
But you have to learn that you don't take that personal.
Yeah. And that's a part of being in a band is really like a relationship, and as we know, relationships with families and wives, and you really gotta watch what you take personally. You gotta, just back off, take a breath, and that, you know what I'm saying?
For sure, and that helps going on tour, because you're all in a van or in a bus, or in a backstage room, and you're just around each other. So you learn how to take pause or take breaks and create space, whether it's just reading a book or breathing, or you and Sergio do a lot of running.
Saved my life. There
you have it.
Highly suggest it. If you're on the road, just take off running.
As I said, movement.
Yeah,
big
for
part.
sure.
So
absolutely.
One could hear that you're really satisfied with the album, and that's quite great. So now it's up to you. And it's up to you now to ask them questions. We have microphones, so please wait for them to come and probably just raise your hand.
It's too bad we can't play them some snippets or something so they could kind of hear it.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Okay.
Yeah? So is there any question? There must be a question. Okay, here vorne.
It's nice I can recognize some people here today. Thanks for coming to our conversation. And thanks for supporting us in concert for all these days and years and things.
It's really lovely to hear you guys talk. I've seen you in many different places in Minneapolis and New York, and I just got my tickets for the November concert here, so that's really exciting.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I really love is you've talked a lot about your collaborations on the albums themselves and in the studio, and a lot of people you work with there. But like one of the most memorable things for me at your concert in the Lincoln Center was that at some point there was, I think, 15 people on stage, and you introduced people as like, oh, this is a violinist we met in Ireland, and now they're joining us. And I just wanted to hear, like, how do those connections happen? How do people just end up on tour with you? I'm not trying to join your tour, but how does that happen, that suddenly there's all these people that are traveling with you? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good
Thank you.
question.
It's a great question, and I mean, I keep hearing this word open. I feel like there's an openness to our approach, and I think we're pretty friendly, and it's really a lot of fun to play in this band, and so I think that's kind of attractive, and there's space for improvisation, and we're not so worried about messing up, you know, and making a mistake, or if something falls, it's okay. It's music, and a lot of times the mistakes are the funnest part, and maybe other musicians pick up on that and are happy to be with us, and we're happy to have them. You know.
Could be a story, you know, the violinist from Ireland, or the band that you toured with, or met backstage at a festival, or somebody you saw on the street. They have character, you know, they have story, and sometimes that really helps out a lot. I noticed too, when we've been on tour as either a 5-piece or a 6-piece, now a 7-piece, you know, and everyone's pretty serious and they're doing their thing, and then all it takes is just, you know, one guest to hop up on stage to enter in a new dynamic, and then it's exciting for all of us on stage, as it is, I think, for the audience too. When you see us and we're not in our element, or maybe I can't read the set list, or I decide just to go with a new song or make up something, and then you see people kind of scramble, look around at each other. They like it. I mean, they may, you know, say like, "Oh my gosh, you know, I didn't know that was happening." But I think the audience picks up on it. It's pretty easy to see or feel, and that's a human moment. Like John was saying, mistakes are okay. And I think with this kind of music and the shows that we do live, or the records we make, there's that element involved, and it's a good reminder, I think, for all of us in life. And those are the kind of things that I'm drawn to, whether it be a street musician or another band, or looking at paintings, or watching a dance piece, or reading a book. It's that, you know, conveying a certain kind of character. And it's hard because there's so much today. There's so much kind of, you can find everything anywhere. And but those certain voices or instruments or ways people perform that really touch you, that you want to, like, for me, I want to, like, show my friends how cool this person is, or this artist, or this band, or this new song, or whatever it may be, you know. So it's kind of part, you know, like a house party or something.
Okay.
It really gets addicting. I have to just say, one time we were playing at the Paradiso in Amsterdam, and Joey had invited Amparo Sanchez to join us, and when she came out on stage, she was dancing this dance. I mean, it was like I could see the energy. She came out on stage, I could see the energy go through all of us on stage, and then just go through every single person in the entire theater. It's so exciting when that happens, you know. And so we want it to happen more, you know, invite more people. And what do you play?
That's your entrance.
Oh, okay. Right.
So are there more questions? Here in the front.
I'm Holger. I'm a big fan from you both, from your band, and from the whole Tucson scene, from all these musicians and bands in Tucson, Arizona. It's awesome. And your first show here in Berlin, in Heimathafen, is for a long time sold out. My question is, give it a show in April, a second show in April here in Berlin for all these fans here in this city.
Boy, that would be nice. I think, you know, it's interesting sometimes the way in which we plan and design a tour. I think the idea is to come back and, like you were saying, you have a ticket at the Columbia Halle show in November. We've had a lot of fond memories of playing all over Berlin, sometimes in apartments, sometimes in clubs, Columbia Hall definitely stands out as a really unique place. We never played Heimathafen, and I'm looking forward to that. And I think it's nice to kind of change it up sometimes too, with like playing an intimate setting. And that's what I was thinking when we were talking earlier about, here we're talking about the recording and how it's just John and I, and that you don't really get to hear that kind of stripped down version of the songs. And it would be nice to do that, maybe at a small venue or in somebody's backyard or something, I don't know. But, so sometimes I like playing the smaller venues just to kind of have that initial immediacy and intimacy with an audience, and also with the songs that are just kind of starting to take shape, because even though, we've recorded the songs, we're learning how to play them as an ensemble, and we're learning how to share them with an audience. And so it's going to be exciting to see what happens. And so thanks for being patient with us. And hopefully we'll get to see you again in November. It'll probably be a different show, is my guess. We try to make those kind of, shows much more different. And thanks too for talking about the Tucson music scene. I mean, it's a fabulous and an incredible area. The Sonoran Desert, and especially southeast Arizona, is really, we love it, and we love all the people there. There's a lot of great music, and like Sergio Mendoza has a group. A lot of the guys in the band have musical projects and are extremely talented in their own right, and all of our friends in and around Tucson too. Thank you. Thanks. It's good to see you.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Larissa.
For being here
Yeah.
and coming back and giving us such a nice record, which
Yeah.
comes out in April and is very worth listening to. Thank you very much.
Thank
it's
you.
a
Joey
pleasure.
and John.
Sorry.
Thanks,
From
everybody.
Calexico.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.